Sometimes when you purchase something that is not yet built, where it's kind of a kit and you've got to put it together yourself, you open up the box, you get out all the pieces. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but sometimes when you look at your instructions and you look at all the pieces you have, you realize, wait a minute, there's an entire piece here that I just don't have. It's missing. I can't build what I want to build. So then you got to call up the manufacturer and they ship it in. You get those missing pieces and then you're able to put it all together. In my case, I then became the proud owner of a 4-shelf bookcase. And when it comes to our NSX universal devices, if we create a bunch of universal switches that are able to be supported across various different vCenter boundaries, we can attach all the VMs that we want to them, but it's not going to serve any purpose unless we provide the final piece that's missing, which will be a router that can support routing between those various different networks and out to the rest of the data center. And in this nugget, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to create that universal router that is used to connect those universal switches to each other and attach it to our edge routers to support egress from the network. The setup for this nugget is based upon the create a universal logical switch nugget, where we logged into the VMware hands-on lab 1925. I pre-wiped out all the configuration that was there, and then we created a universal transport zone and these 5 universal switches that we see right here. And we're ready to go ahead and start defining the routing level of universal objects. So we'll head to NSX edges on the left-hand side. Again, we're back to focusing on the primary. Let's click on the green plus to add a new object. And we see we have a third object now available to create a universal logical router instead of just a standard distributed logical router. So we'll go ahead and create this ULR. There's a little check mark called Enable Local Egress. And if your NSX managers are essentially in the same data center, the underlying networking supporting the NSX managers and all the ESXi hosts is the same, then there's no need to add this extra level of complexity. But if we do enable local egress, then we can have different routes being applied at the cluster or ESXi host level so that those nodes that are actually in a physically different network can receive different routes. In this demonstration, we're going to leave it blank, but it's important to be ready for this because once set at the creation of the universal logical router, this value cannot be changed. And we're going to call this ULR, and we will allow it to deploy the edge appliance, again, the control VM that allow for dynamic routing and firewall capabilities. We'll click Next. Under Settings, same need for an administrative username and password. We'll put a check mark in to enable secure shell access and then click Next. For deployment, we'll click the green plus to add our edge appliance. From the drop-down menu, we'll choose the management cluster and select the iSCSI data store and click OK. And then click Next. For the HA interface configuration, we'll click Select. And from the list of distributed port groups, we'll go ahead and choose the ESXi Region 1 for management. And then click OK. Then down at the bottom, we get to the good stuff, the routing interfaces. So we'll click the green plus there. And let's add the web tier ULS. We'll click Connected To and choose Select, and we'll choose the Universal Web Tier Switch, and then click OK. Then we'll click the green plus as normal to add an IP address. And we'll add the IP address of 172.16.10.1 with a subnet prefix of 24. My friend, I fixed this while the camera was off, so I wanted to point this out. This is an example of an internal interface routing between logical switches, so we should definitely mark this as internal. I did that after the fact, but you didn't get a chance to see it. Click OK. And then we're going to wash, rinse, repeat and perform the same actions for our other interfaces. With 3 internal interfaces and 2 uplink interfaces, we're set. Now we'll click Next. We're going to uncheck configuring a specific default gateway in this case and click Next, and then click Finish. So what have we done so far? Well, we created 5 universal logical switches, which are associated with a single universal logical router. And we attached some virtual machines from our primary vCenter, and we saw how easy it is to be able to support that from our secondary vCenter server as well. So we could have complete universality. We could move objects back and forth between, and it would be transparent because they would all act as though they were part of the same network. Well, if we want to be able to support access outside of this little realm, we need to be able to connect to the physical networks eventually that are associated with each of these different regions. And that process would involve creating an edge routed device and connecting it with an uplink out to the physical network in region A and doing the same thing in region B, and then hooking each of those up into the universal logical switches that are associated with the universal logical router. And then to make our lives much easier, we'd probably add dynamic routing protocols like OSPF or BGP. And so, my friend, if you have multiple vCenter servers, this nugget was for you, because these are the objects that we want to create to support universal networks that can cross the vCenter boundary. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.